Diabulela ma Afrika mahle. Isahloko endinikwe uba mandithethe kuso namhlanje ma Afrika is the mental damage that has been caused by Western invaders in Africa. And how that up to today has affected our unity, umanyano lwethu singama Afrika. Dacinga xa mention igama la ngoma kaTata Stompi Mavi ethi umanyano. Khona ingoma emnandi kakhulu kaTata Stompi Mavi ethi umanyano ma Afrika. You know, the second part of what I'm going to speak about is a historical perspective on how Western invaders affected ingqondo zethu, our mental state. And how do we move forward as a united front and as a country and especially as young people. So that is the theme, or that is the topic of a discussion. And this will take xesha lide ke ma Afrika. Kuba xa ndithetha inyani ndizamile ukucinga ubusuku bonke neentsuku ezi coming to le event ukuthi yintoni ndingathetha ndithini xa ndime phambi kwenu. Ndingulo mntwana ndinguye. Phambi kwabantu abadala abanamava abanjengani. Kodwa ke ndithe nam ndizawuthi nje vanxa. Ndiyayazi bakhona abantu abadala ingwevu neengwevukazi ezikhoyo apha ezizawukhanyisa ngaphezulu ngakumbi kunoba mna ndizawuthetha. So I know ukuthi there are elders in this house, and I do want to pay my respects and my homage to all of the elders, abantu who have paved the way for ukuthi sikwazi ukuma apha kule ndawo sime kuyo namhlanje. I do give my honor and respect to all of you, bantu abakhulu, bantu abadala, to the elder uba uRadebe. We give great honor and respect. Lento yenzekayo apha namhlanje nesiyibona isenzeka nje throughout the country, throughout the continent. There is a great awakening that we see happening up in Africa. But I think I want to bring a little bit of a context. I'm going to talk about pre-colonial Black Africa. Africa, Africa before colonialism. Very briefly. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the invasion of the white vultures. When the vultures came in Africa to invade umhlaba wethu. The destruction that came with that invasion of the vultures. Where are we today? That's the third part of what I'm going to speak about. Siphi namhlanje singama Africa. Where are we in the world? What is the state of the black race, the black nation today? And lastly, ndizothetha about potential solutions to some of the challenges that we are faced with. So, very often in Africa we are told, and it is common knowledge today, that Africa is the cradle of humanity. Kutshiwo kuthiwa wonke umuntu comes from the continent. But to put it differently, we can say that the original man and the original woman are African. They come from Africa. They were birthed in Africa. So, xa sithetha ngalento kuthiwa ngumntu or nguntu, untu is African. So the first cause, the first people who were created, who walked this earth, the first people who populated planet Earth were African people. The African man and the African woman. Leyo into kufuneka ibe clear. And you know, xa sithetha ngolu hlobo lento ndikhumbule into edla ngothethwa into kokubana in the African consciousness and in our conception, we do not have this crazy patriarchal and misogynistic idea which puts women down. Sithi hayi uThixo wadala indoda and then umuntu ongumama waphuma from the rib of a man. That is nonsense, because every man esimbonayo who lives here, uthi uBob Marley, the greatest man you ever see was once a baby. So wonke ubani, everyone that you see, the greatest man you see, wayinqanqebeleni kamama. Everyone you see comes from the womb of umama. Siphuma esibelekweni sikamama, which shows you that umada is divine, umada is creator, umada is heaven. You know, umama. So that's one point. But whilst we are told that Africa is the cradle of humanity, what we are not told is that Africa is also the cradle of all of the so-called civilization. Africa is the cradle of all of the so-called scientific disciplines in the world. Namhlanje, we are told that abantwana bethu, black children, are struggling with mathematics. Black children are struggling with science. Black children are struggling with chemistry and all of those things. We can't relate to them. Siyasokola. Thina, all of the subjects esikwazi ukuzifunda, it's just the simple subjects, the humanities and whatnot. But when it comes to the sciences, the complex issues ezifuna udile with the abstractions and problem solving, black children are nowhere to be found there. We are found wanting. But the problem is not so much that abantwana babantu abamnyama bayazi maths okanye bayazi science nezi subjects. It's because these things are taught from a white perspective, a white supremacist center. There is a everything that you teach is taught from a particular point of view. So in mathematics, we approach it today from a European perspective because we believe that in mathematics, science are things that were given to us by Europeans. So before the coming of the white man, in Africa we didn't have science according to what we are made to believe. And this is the problem that you have in Africa, because like I've said, whilst Africa is the cradle of humanity, Africa is also the cradle of civilization. Africa is also the cradle of all the scientific disciplines. So you talk about mathematics, it originated in Africa. You talk about chemistry, it originated in Africa. And it's interesting, this word chemistry, because it's got a connection with the word chemet. And chemet being the original name of elalizwe kuthiwa Egypt, you know. And Egypt, we speak about it because kulapho inkcubeko yethu, the civilizations that we were building, all of them reached their climax in ancient Kemet. So that is when we had perfected the things that we were doing. But a civilization did not originate a Kemet. Kemet is actually our youngest civilization. The oldest civilizations, Zase Africa, come from the south, going up into the continent. Right when you reach ancient Kemet, Egypt, that is when we have perfected the sciences. We have perfected the architecture, the art of building. We have perfected the masonry. We have perfected the medicine, the art of using herbs for healing. We had perfected all of these things ekuthiwa zi-science today. Ekuthiwa umntana omuntu omnyama akakwazi ukurelate nazo today. So, for example, in mathematics, kukhona into ekuthiwa i-Pythagorean theorem. Don't you think it would have a huge impact kumntana omuntu omnyama if you taught us into yokubana uPythagoras was a white Greek man? It was a white boy who came from Greece and came into Egypt, in Kemet. and studied in Kemet for about 3 decades. 30 years studying in Egypt. And then went back into Greece. Kuthiwe phayana xa kufikwa, he's the father of a theorem, ekuthiwa yi-Pythagorean theorem. Don't you think if abantu who are studying medicine today were told into yokokubana Hippocrates or Hippocrates, that Greek Hippocrate, Hippocrates, because when people who study medicine, xa ugqiba medicine yakho, you take an oath, it's called a Hippocratic oath. Esasifungo usithathayo into yobana ngoku wena uzoba ngugqirha. It's named after a white Greek man ekuthiwa nguHippocrates, the Hippocrate. So Hippocrates was a student in ancient Egypt himself. For more than 4 decades, Hippocrates, sitting in ancient Kemet. And kuthiwa, the actual person who was known as not even a father of medicine, a god of medicine, Imhotep. So it would have a huge impact if you teach us about Imhotep. You see, you teach us about the people who founded the scientific disciplines as Kemet. Imhotep, he was a multi-genius. Imhotep. He was the vizier or the prime minister of the great pharaoh of Kemet, Uzwi-Lezwe. But he is the one who built the oldest pyramid in Egypt, which was a step pyramid, the largest and the biggest pyramid in ancient Egypt. It was built by a black man called Imhotep. You see? And so you need to teach abantwana bethu about abantu. But also, Tina, we had a great brotherhood in the south, or Azania, Motapa, however you want to call this part of our land. We had a brotherhood of people who were connected to the ancient Kemet. Bona abakhulu baseKhemu. It's important to teach these things. To teach into yokokubana xa sithetha ngeKemet sithetha about, it means the land of the blacks, the land of black people. Even eligama lesiGreek elithi Egypt, when you go and check what does Egypt mean, it means the land of the blacks. You see? Even the Ethiopian name, the Greek name, Ethiopia, it's a Greek name, but it also means the land of the blacks, the land of the sunburnt faces. You see? And igama le Ethiopia original kuthiwa sisizwe sakwaKush, the empire, the great empire of Kush, the Kushite empire. So, Africa, I wanted to give this context because this is who we were. We're the founders of civilization. We're the founders of mathematics. We're the founders of science and all of these things. And these things need to be taught up in Africa. Our systems were matriarchal. We are the founders of a law which was built on a principle Ma'at, the Ma'atic principle. And the Ma'atic principle is represented by a female goddess with wings, you see, who stands on the balance of the scales of justice. So, this is what needs to be taught. Xa abantu befunda law, departments of all of these universities, because they are universities, because just indoctrinators zifaka European ideas. So it was quite funny to watch and see during the time of Fees Must Fall how black students were being ridiculed for calling for so-called decolonization of education. It was even worse when a student from, I think it was VETS or UCT, said that must decolonize with science. What must decolonize with mathematics? And people made a mockery of her because there is this lie that is perpetuated, that science is universal. Science is neutral. So when you speak about science, you are talking about something that is, unquestionable, something that is just. And yet, science nayo, you both know it. Science was used to oppress us in many ways. And like I've said, everything exists is founded upon certain philosophical worldviews. and the science, in mathematics, in law, all of these things, the justice system are all founded on European ideas, European philosophical ideas. And these philosophical ideas are the ideas of, these are the ideas upon which racism in itself was founded. So you talk about, for example, people go into university and study philosophy, and we are taught about Greek philosophers, Aristotle, or Plato, or Socrates, you know, and all of these people are so-called great philosophers. And yet these are the very same people who were justifying, they gave the so-called scientific justification for racism, for colonialism, for this idea of white superiority, that white people are inherently superior to every other race in the world. So, one other example, kulendo ye civilization nenkcubeko, is into esiyifundileyo through the works of some of the elders who are here. The fact that, for example, the oldest calendar in the world, ilapha Africa. And xa ndisithi Africa, I don't even mean kwezandawo eziphezulu, but ilapha eMpumalanga, inzalo yelanga. You know, that Tato Credo Muta were teaching us about. You know, so, but also, Tato Mkhulu Nsingiza at the great empire of Kemet, they've also given us an African calendar, which is based on the principles of the ancient Kemet. You know, and giving our own interpretation, because for example, if umuntu ngambuza ngibani star sign sakho apho omnye uzozibiza ndingu-Sagittarius, ndingu-Cancer, ndingu-Banban, ndingu-Gemini, and all of these things. And all of these things are Greek gods. These are Greek names, you see. So we praise the gods of our oppressors on a daily and consistent basis. Sithandaza izithixo zabacinezeli bethu on a daily and consistent basis. So how do you expect that you are going to be liberated as umuntu omnyama? You know, when you praise the God of your oppressor, the same person who wakes up and prays to their white Jesus and say, white Jesus, give me strength to oppress this kafir. Give me the wisdom, give me the strength, give me the ideas. Every day Ubota wakes up, De Klerk wakes up, Terry Blanche wakes up, they wake up and pray to their God. They invoke the spirit of their God on hot, on the land and whatnot. They praise their God. And when you also believe that the very same white God, the same white Jesus is going to liberate you as umuntu omnyama njani. So hlutwe. So ke ma-Afrika, so hlutwe ubuntu bethu ngaloo ndlela. And xa ungenabuntu uyintoni? Because singabantu into esiyiyo. And umuntu kuthiwa ngumuntu ngabanye abantu. That is how we used to be as abantu. But also xa ungumntu, inye into ekudefinayo is isintu sakho. So if uphucwe and they rip you off and they strip you off ubuntu bakho and isintu sakho, then you are an empty shell. What Steve Biko, what the black man is like an empty shell. So how Steve Biko efundisa ngala philosophy of black consciousness, he was saying, Steve Biko, you need to pump back the life into this empty shell, you know, so that umdomnyama akwazi once again to take their form and their shape. Black men, wake up, rise up from your bed, rise up from your sleep. That is what Biko was saying. Vuka. Yabo. You know, lando kutwa, you know, amathambo mawaphinda hlangane sort of thing, you know. These dry bones. Kutwa, I mean, you know, can the dry bones live? Bachopa, you know, kweza ncwadi eBhayibhelini. Kutwa lamathambo, can they live now? Because abantu abamnyama, we are like a nation of abantu who were buried alive. You see? And that is why you find all of the social ills that you find amongst Mnyama today. All of them are embedded on the fact that we were systematically destroyed. Ingqondo zethu were stripped off. But also our souls, because white people did not only attack our land, They do not only attack ingqondo zethu, but also spiritually our souls, you know. And it's not only white people only per se, because up north Africa invadwe ngama-Arab kuqala. Ehamba ngantoni ngegospel ka Muhammad, ngegospel ke Quran, the gospel Islam. And hence you find the northern part of the African continent today is largely Islamic, because we were colonized through Islam, Mohammedism, and yonke le doctrine yabo ye Islam up north. And right down south, the Christians came, because colonized was the Christians. So we mustn't run away from the fact that Christianity and colonialism, they go hand in hand in way one. You see, it's a hand and a glove. So, Leyo Indo, Christianity is a doctrine that has been crafted by Europeans to advance a white supremacist agenda, their value systems. And the value systems, the whites are embedded on their racism. Now, into engikhalela siye kuyo ke ngoma ma-Afrika khoseni bona ixesha lami liphelile. Ngikhalela siye nje kwinto ethi, what are the solutions? How do we move forward from this thing? I think that what we need to do, and this is an idea that I discussed and we shared with a brother of mine, Okona and I up. I think that as African people, we need to use all of this, because the purpose of studying about these civilizations is not simply because it's for amusement or for us to romanticize. But hey, we once had great civilizations. But what can we learn from these civilizations? So how can we take these civilizations and make them to be sort of a template of the kind of state or the kind of nation esifunayo? So if umzekelo sizothatha the empire of Benin, sithi babesenza kanjani eBenin? Or if we take the empire of Kemet for that matter and say the empire of Kemet, what system were they using to rule? And try and emulate Leo into. I think that's one of the ways in which we can move forward. Siyeke nalento yosoloko si only quoting that, you know, we had great empires and whatnot. But what can we learn in terms of how they were running their systems of government, how they were running their communities and so forth? The justice system, how was it? And how can we translate those into today in a practical sense? And then the second thing, we need to stop working in silos. We have great many minds here. We have great institutions as Koyo up. Individuals, collectively, the institutions. But those institutions are working in little corners here and there. So we need to stop that and find a way of working collectively. But most importantly, Africa, we need to build, I think for me, a power. Because singayenza yonke lento siyenzayo. Because when we build power, we will be able to build institutions. Lento siyenzayo apha, it needs to become institutionalized. It needs to be an institution. Study more on Umakas Garvey. Study more about Umakas Garvey, you know. And go and read and buy a book, yake, The Philosophy and Opinions. It's very expensive. Those are the things in Tetanga's. Let's have our own institutions, publishing houses, publish all of these ideas that people have here, and distribute them far and wide. Ngalo mazwi ndiyabulela ma-Afrika mahle.